Coming up on this edition of Southwest TV News. The past number of months have been warmer and drier than usual for the Swift Current area. And as local residents enjoy the mild conditions, fire officials are concerned over the potential for grass fires. Following one of the mildest winters on record for Southwest Saskatchewan, spring has now arrived. The Swift Current stockade drew in exhibitors and patrons from across Western Canada for the 39th annual Hobby, Craft and Gun Show. Thanks for joining us here today. Ongoing dry conditions across Southwest Saskatchewan are now becoming a concern for local fire officials. We have more in today's top story. The past number of months have been warmer and drier than usual for the Swift Current area. And as local residents enjoy the mild conditions, fire officials are concerned over the potential for grass fires.
Well, with farmers, if they're out in their fields and that, they should have a hand pump water extinguisher would be a good tool to have when you're driving into areas that are really dry, because you can put out a lot of fire before it gets bad. If you have a catalytic converter or something like that on the bottom of your truck, make sure that you clean that out too, and don't let it build up all kinds of chaff and stuff underneath it. As far as within the city or people going out hiking and walking, if you're smoking, don't throw your cigarette butts out into the field or in the dry grass, because that will start a fire. Be careful with what you're doing and just be aware of what's around you. Don't get yourself into a situation where you can be trapped by a grass fire, because a grass fire can move very quickly right now.
Elon further adds that when residents choose to enjoy an evening around the fire pit or barbecue in the backyard, safety should always be top of mind.
You can't burn all the grass and leaves and brush that you've gathered over the winter or whatever. That's not allowed. You have to take it to the landfill. And basically just sit back and enjoy it. Make sure there's a screen over the fire pit and that you have means of putting a fire out if something does happen.
You're further reminded that permits are required for all fire pits in the city of Swift Current. Permit fees are $25 each, with the paperwork processed through the city's fire department. As the effects of El Nino start to weaken, mild conditions remain in the forecast across Southwest Saskatchewan. Following one of the mildest winters on record for Southwest Saskatchewan, spring has now arrived. And Environment Canada is expecting the mild conditions to continue through the month of April, with the chance of various forms of precipitation.
I often think about April. Till April's dead, change not a thread. We know that on the prairies that you can get, it typically in Swift Current, for example, 15% of your annual snowfall occurs after the 1st of April. And and into May. And a good shot of snow wouldn't be something that farmers would be disappointed by. And when we look at the forecast for the next little while, we look at April. April is sometimes called the cruel month. It may not be in Saskatchewan. We see parts of in southwestern Saskatchewan, as it's going to be in Alberta and British Columbia, a little warmer than normal. We think that's what April will be. We think as you get further to the east into Manitoba and to Ontario, it may be actually a little cooler April.
And looking beyond April in the coming months, the mild conditions are expected to continue across the Southwest throughout the summer season.
And it sounds like a broken record. We think that it will continue to be milder than normal to milder than normal. El Nino is pretty well is decaying. It's not what it used to be, but it still has some kind of an influence on our weather out west, and that's what our models are suggesting, that as we get in from April, May, and early June, we see conditions being normal to actually warmer than normal. And then most of the models seem to suggest that the summer will be a milder than normal season.
The short-term forecast is calling for sunshine and above seasonal temperatures throughout the coming week. The normal high for this time of the year in Southwest Saskatchewan is 8, with an overnight low of -4.
We know in the work we do with BirdLife that unless you consult local people, unless you work with them, you will fail.
Antique collectors and other patrons packed the Swift Current stockade for the annual Gun and Hobby Show. We bring you some of the highlights in this report. The Swift Current Stockade drew in exhibitors and patrons from across Western Canada for the 39th annual Hobby, Craft, and Gun Show. The two-day event showcased a variety of items for all tastes, from antiques, coins, arts and crafts, to guns. A crowd-pleasing event which has grown in popularity over the years, with the 85 exhibitors in the stockade selling items from the good old days to present day. Henry Banman is the event organizer and says the show has grown from its humble beginnings 39 years ago.
I was a member of the Saskatchewan Gun Collectors Association back then, and I was at the Regina show and I saw that they were doing it all wrong. And it was just a straight gun show, and I knew that the gun shows per se were dying. And I suggested to them that we should add the hobbies to it. And they weren't too keen on that. So I said, well, if you guys are going to be that regressive, I said, I don't want any part of you. And I'm going back to Swift Current, and I started the first gun and hobby show that make it the family type show that it is. And you know, now every successful show in Western Canada that is successful is doing exactly that.
The Hobby, Craft, and Gun Show is held each spring during the first weekend of April and returns in the fall and early November at the Swift Current Stockade. Well, this brings to a close another episode of Southwest TV News, reporting the stories that matter to you. We always welcome your news tips. You can always reach us here by phone at our studio or by email to contact us at southwesttvnews.com. Also, be sure to join us daily online for the latest news from across Southwest Saskatchewan and so much more at MyLocalTV.ca. And be sure to follow us on a range of social media. Thanks for joining us here today. I'm Carol Andrews.